So what I learned to do last hour was share my screen, so you don't even have to look at me.
What? I like looking at you.
So I'm going to so my slides. Oh, look at that! I'm in a corner.
Yes. What did you think you were gonna get out so easily?
Right. Like your black screen.
No, 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 no.
So we're discussing marriage and relationship, modern concepts versus biblical principles, and this tickled me. Oh, this is part one. What tickled me is that I keep on saying Homer.
Homework.
Homer instead of Hosea.
Why? Homer. What? Are you thinking The Simpsons or are you thinking Grease?
Right?
Which
not
one
Grease.
is it?
Not Grease. It very well could be The Simpsons, but I was like, okay, apparently Hollywood celebrity names is getting to me because I'm like combining Hosea and Gomer together and coming up with Homer. Homer and Gomer. So excuse me. Actually, I can correct this while I'm in here
Yes.
instead of keep saying it. So on the last video, it's all Homer Gomer.
No. No more Hollywood for you.
No more
You're
Homer. You're like, you
you're
just know what you're
forbidden.
talking about. Homer Simpson did not marry Gomer.
I mean, what was her name? I forget her name.
Marge.
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 Close enough.
Close enough. Like Gomer knocked Marge out the box. Okay, so my apologies. That's my chuckle for the day. Oh my gosh.
We all need to start with a good laugh.
I crack myself up sometimes. All the time, actually. That's all I got.
And actually, it's good because people join you on that, so it's good laughter.
It's a good laugh. So we're here discussing part two of marriage and relationships, discussing Abram and Sarai and Hosea and Gomer. The text we're looking at is Genesis 12 through 13, 15 through 18, and 20 through 22. Those are chapters. And the book of Hosea, which is 14 chapters, but rather short. So I have a confession. I think I read all of this like the first week, and I took a few notes, but not a lot of notes. And my goal was to go back through and take a lot of notes. And of course, that goal is somewhere else. It didn't happen. So pretty much what we're going through is my preliminary notes. And before we start with the names tell a story, we can discuss the names for both Abram, Sarah, and Hosea and Gomer. But I wanted to say, I put your first questions in with Hosea's story because I thought they fit well there, right? And I actually had some verses, but it doesn't look like my verses were saved. So you had asked before the last session, what is biblical divorce? How do we know that God has chosen or approved a man for us? And what does the Bible say about remarrying, right? Still, Dorina, you're on mute. Are you on mute?
Yes, I muted myself. So yes, that's correct. That was my question.
Okay, so I think that those questions can be answered really well within the context of Hosea and with other references. And I'll look for the other references because I actually did dig into that for some other examples where the book was talking about divorce. But it doesn't look like, oh, here it goes. Okay, I knew I did the work. So I don't know if you can screenshot or, I mean, of course I can send you these, but they're not complete. But these are other, and there's more, but these are the primary, I guess, areas or verses or books where divorce was spoken about explicitly. Hosea, Jeremiah, Deuteronomy, Malachi, Matthew, and Mark. So I'm not sure if you read those yet, but they're a good read. So I wanted to point that out. and then we can get started on the naming. So, where are we?
So I was going to add something to my question, because since we talked last, I did a little bit more research on the topic. And I came across a couple of other sermons from different pastors. And I'm very careful because, I mean, when I go out there and look for information, I'm very careful with where I go for information, because I'm trying to get the message that is the message from the Bible. Because during my independent Bible study, I've come to learn that sometimes there's a little bit too much compromise from the word, from the Bible. And it's because, I don't know, we live in modern times, and not that, sin is sin. Since the fall, Adam and Eve, we have the sin. But I feel like with technology and everything that we have around us, and I don't know, maybe it's a little bit more pressure or social pressure, a variety of reasons, but I feel like sometimes things are being sugar coated.
Always.
Yeah. And for that reason, I'm very careful where I go and with my sources and resources. But when it comes to the question, the biblical divorce, like the one circumstance where, like, I guess the way I understood, like, obviously marriage is sacred, and divorce should not be part of the covenant of marriage. And the divorce came into place with the sin. But because we have sin, we also have divorce. So now I understand that we have cases where people are going through very, very difficult situations where, you have abuse, and you have things that are, it's like you can't even describe them. So those, in those situations, you have to look at those things, like the person is in danger, and it's a different story. But when we're talking about divorce, as far as like, oh, I'm just not happy anymore, and I don't like him, or whatever, I mean, those are like so superficial. It feels like it's like a Hollywood movie, and then you get the happy ending, and then the camera's lights go off, and then people just, I'm no longer happy, and then just find an excuse for that. So I feel like it obviously the Bible tells us a lot about it, but my latest take on this is that it's all related to the sin, and that we have fallen, and that's one big takeaway that I have.
I would say yes. So I think everything after the fall is the sin, right? And we're dealing with the repercussions of it. But I think also, rather than focusing on the sin itself, right, or the fall, I think everything after Adam and Eve is God basically trying to bring us back to himself, right? And so if we are, we can look at Genesis. Was it one? Is it no Genesis 2, where God says to Adam and Eve, basically, that a man will leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife, or join to his wife, right? And basically, to me, that says everything we need to know, right? Just that verse says everything we need to know about the intent of marriage, right? It's that, we are not just combining, stirring together, right? Two lives. We're literally joining like glue or like a joint, or we're piecing together two individuals and making them one, right? And that was the original intent, and everything that happens after is intended to get us here, right? Um, so yeah, we can look at how people in general look at marriage today, and we can look at how people probably look at marriage as early as Abraham and before Abraham, Noah, right? And see that they've all been wrong. you know, we've been wrong since the beginning of time. Adam and Eve were wrong. They chose something other than God when they had the option of God's presence in their face in the garden. They chose something other than God, right? So, yeah, we can completely look at the world as something that's just smoke and mirrors, right? And that's completely sugar coated. And the world is intended to pull us away from what God has for us, right? And you know, I think it's important to be able to, one, identify the lies in the world, identify the strategies of the world, and two, to turn away from it. I mean, three, to turn away from it completely, right? So, I mean, we can identify and strategize and still be drawn to it and say, oh, well, I want to live in my flesh. This is where I want to be. This is what I'm going to do. I can do God later, right? But later doesn't always come, and so that's the gamble. Um, but yeah, I think if you're looking at culture, if you're looking at society, any society, um, I don't think that there's any society in the world that's actually practicing marriage the way that God intended, right? Um,
I agree. I mean, I think that Christians in general do have a good idea
mhm.
about marriage and about uh, the wife and the husband joining together and being one. But I also think that Christians also have they struggle. So it's just it's tough to like think about how do you get to the bottom of this, because you're just going down and down, and you're like, it's complex. But I agree with you that God intended a union, and between one man and a woman. And if I'm looking at the biblical couples, like if I'm looking at Abraham and Sarah, I mean, I and in like I'm looking at it also from like I'm looking at them as a couple, but also like he was able to have Ishmael with Hagar. So I like I the way I understood, and it was explained in the Bible study to me, is that it's not that God created one man for one woman, but once they got on earth and got left the Garden of Eden, then on earth things got complicated, and it was allowed, not that God approved. It's a difference between being allowed and approved. So it was allowed until the message was clear. No more. This is, no, just that particular enforcement of, to put it like that, because I don't know what word to use for it. It would become more clear. It's like, okay, you are only allowed to have one wife for one husband, and that's it. And I mean, I know last time we've talked about also how you get into a marriage, and then sometimes you bring in family members that are involved, and sometimes they seem to be more involved in your marriage than you're involved. So if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And from my perspective, I completely agree that you become one. But I'm also aware that, regardless, your family is still there, and it might be it might be that you're in circumstances that things, some things might be positive, some things might be negative, that are coming from your, from your own family. Like some family members might have negative things to say about your marriage, and we have no choice but to learn how to handle those relationships and how to best preserve those relationships, and maybe later on reconcile, but at the same time, the primary relationship is the husband and the wife, which is hard. I feel like it's very hard to do.
To stay within that context, you're saying, or to put people out of it?
To basically focus on your marriage and you and the husband, and at the same time, if you have forces that are, like, let's say you have a mother-in-law that does not like, I mean, there are plenty of, situations where the wife and the mother-in-law don't get along. So it requires a lot of effort for that dynamic to, to.
Well, I get it, but I mean, who said that marriage is easy or effortless, right? So I'm like, it takes a lot of effort to get a job, but who's super happy on a job, We have to get qualifications, we have to get education, we have to get, understanding, we have to build our skills, we have to do all these things in order to perform well on a job, right? Mm-hmm. But no one comes away from a job saying, oh gosh, it was really, really hard for me to excel in that job because there were so many other people in the office. Well, what were you expecting?
Yeah. I agree. And I'm not saying that.
And it's not an attack, but it's just an analogy, right? What are you expecting, right? So are you going to allow everybody else in the office to impact how you do your job and get your paycheck? Mm-hmm. Marriage is work. I haven't been married. But it's been a lot of work to even look for a husband.
No, come on. I hear you. It's not easy.
So to look for a partner who actually sees me as a partner has been pretty much an endeavor of the last 2 decades. And guess what? I haven't found one. So that tells me a hell of a lot right there. Excuse my language. It tells me that if this thing is possible for me, it's going to probably be even more work to maintain it, right?
Yes.
So
I agree.
I think you're right. A lot of people go into this thinking, well, wait a minute. I saw this Hollywood movie. I saw this Disney fairy tale. I saw Prince Charming. I saw the Little Mermaid. I saw, Rapunzel drop down her braid and he climbed up to her. This man was a patron. He climbed a castle tower for this woman. And this man won't cross the street and say hi? Like, we're flabbergasted because we've been fed all these stories of the world. Mm-hmm. And we prioritize the stories of the world over the stories of the word, right?
Yeah.
So what you're trying to do is reconcile the word to the world. And there's no reconciliation there. There's none. There's none. You have to reject one and accept the other, right?
Agreed. 100% agreed with that. But yeah. Isn't it interesting with this analogy of the Hollywood and the fairy tale? Mm-hmm. Because like, even if you're thinking about Cinderella, she's like sweeping and washing dishes before the prince shows up, and then once
Yeah.
the prince shows up, and then she's a princess, like as if you're marrying and you don't have to do anything else after that.
Oh, she doesn't have to clean. She doesn't have to make her clothes.
No more. That's all gone.
We got people for all that. Oh yeah, sure. Well, let me even another one is like becoming a homeowner, because I've been thinking about this a lot. And I also want to do like a series on home ownership and maintaining your home, right? It's like no one talks about everything that happens after you get the dream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like you work all your, you just like you running, you trying, you working, you putting all this in there, and you're trying to get 3%, 10%, 20%. You got that, you got the down payment. Now you're in the house. House. And then you have to pay this contractor, that vendor, this bill, that. How do I have like 10 different bills for this house? There's energy, there's water, there's sewer, there's garbage, there's lights. There's
nobody's talking about the maintenance when you're signing the contract.
The maintenance. No one's talking about the maintenance. And that's
no, because you know, but again, and it's a good analogy, because marriage is beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's great to have those unions and work at it and making them work. But again, they're painting this beautiful picture,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're not talking about the maintenance too much, and then you're often you're looking around, like, even I'm not talking just about the Christians, but just marriage in our society today. Like, everybody's looking at answers for their problems, but very few people are looking at the word. So
Exactly.
they're just like, they're looking at counseling, this, that, and the other, and very few at the word. And the more time I get to spend in the word and trying to understand God's character, the more I understand how amazing the Bible is, and how like your mind just transforms with every chapter that you're learning. And I mean, you've been in the word for a lot longer time, but I'm sure you have.
Time is relative, but I don't think the length of time matters. Go on.
No, I was gonna say, you are more mature in your studying. So, but you probably remember in the beginning when you started getting into it, and then all of a sudden a veil lifts up, and then you're like, ah.
Veils are still lifting, and that's the beauty of it. Like, I mean, like, even, I'll take us to our name study, and I want you to share yours, right? So even to when I was studying my name last week or the week before, whenever I pull that up, I've looked up my name before. I've seen that God is gracious. LaShonda means God is gracious. Hello, gracious God.
Hello.
Love it.
Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. So, I mean, like, I've known that for years, right? But it's still a revelation when I look it up, right? That's just the amazing thing about his word and his promises. Like, we can know something. We can have visual knowledge of it. We can have, spiritual acceptance of it. And we can have a basic understanding of it. But when we are reintroduced to it, it's like a new revelation, right? And so I'll maintain length of time in the word doesn't necessarily mean anything, because every day, like he said, his mercies are brand new, right? And so it's like I'm, even though I, what I understood before this study was completely different than what I'm getting out of it now, right? And that's a solid truth. Like, I've read these stories before numerous of times. I've heard countless sermons on them, right? But I've never looked at these stories this way, and so it's all new to me, And
so I guess in each season, when you go back and read it, it just speaks to you differently.
It really does. It really does. It absolutely does.
Wow. Well, I have to confess, I read the Bible, but I was like just reading through it from the beginning to an end. And for me, it was difficult to get through the whole reading because I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't really understanding. It's just,
Yeah.
it can be heavy text. But the
Yeah.
second that I paired that up with actual studying where somebody's explaining to me what is going on,
You got
that's
it.
when the magic happened. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and I just can't just put it any other way. It's like we don't use the word magic, but you know what I
Or
mean.
something snapped. Yeah. It snapped into place. I
Yeah,
get it.
it's just
Yeah.
it's just like it happened that you feel that completely. It's a completely different process.
Well, and that's why I like the idea of discussion, right? So it's like I don't want to, I shared this on my real estate page, the study today. I shared it on my real estate page. And on my real estate page, there's people who have known me for 20 years, right? So, they're following me. So they know my history. They know I've been single all my life, right? And
Hmm.
and most of them are married with kids. So I put this up there. I really, really, really wanted to put a disclaimer. Like, I really wanted to say, yes, I'm talking about, marriage and relationship. I'm not teaching about marriage, right? I know I'm not married. I may not be qualified, but I literally had to stop myself from putting a disclaimer because I feel as if this is something that God has put in my heart and that He's guiding me into, right? And so, in order for me to disclaim myself, I'm also sort of disclaiming what He's working in me, right? And
But a
so,
disclaimer in what sense? Like what type
a
of disclaimer?
disclaimer in a sense, basically saying I know I'm not qualified, right?
But why?
Because I'm not married,
Yeah, but
or
I
haven't been
know,
married.
but that does not disqualify you.
I know, I know that, but this is what I'm saying. I know I'm not disqualified. I know I'm called, right? But what I'm saying is that even looking at people, like because I'm sharing with people who know this, basically know my status, right? I felt as if they were going to look at me as if I wasn't disqualified, so I was going to tell them first, right?
Hmm.
So I'm not accepting that I'm disqualified. I'm saying that basically I'm looking at the world and I'm still trying to reconcile with the world rather than what I know is going on in my spirit, right?
But you're compromising here.
How am I compromising?
Yeah, because well, in a sense, I mean, let me say my point of view.
Uh-huh.
So, okay, so I understand your position, and then the world, because the world can turn around and say, well, who are you to talk about this? You've never been
Exactly.
married.
And this is what I'm saying.
And as you can recall, when I was married, I used to come to you for advice often. And I never consider you disqualified. I didn't like your message, but you were right.
Thank you. But that's also what I'm saying, right? I'm not saying that I believe I'm disqualified. I'm saying that
Uh-huh.
basically my in the flesh, my inclination, my first inclination was to put a disclaimer about my disqualification to
Uh-huh.
satisfy someone else's possible perception, right? So I'm not even saying that they're looking at me like this. I'm saying that I'm perceiving that they will perceive me like this, right?
Exactly. And this is what I'm saying. I'm not, I completely understood you, Shanda.
Yeah.
What I'm
Okay.
saying is that well, I
It's
completely
not like
understand
I
what I'm,
didn't compromise because I didn't do it.
no, but the reason why I say this is because you got to go out there with the message. And obviously, you don't have the years of marriage experience, but you have the years of study of the Word of God. And then what I've learned from the studies, I will repeat this often because I don't want to plagiarize these ideas. I agree and I repeat them, but they're not coming from me. So if you keep hearing me saying that, just because I need to give credit. So one in the Bible study, it was said to me that basically we have the Bible, and Bible is truth, and then from the truth you build love. So you put love on top of the truth, but you never do it the other way around. So stay with me. I'm going somewhere. And you don't do it the other way around when your foundation is love, because that doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth. And if you have the truth and you know that the relationships and marriage, the way God sees it and the way God, it's pleasing to the eyes of God, and you're seeing those relationships like that through the lens of God, then you don't have to put any disclaimers, because your entire discussion about marriage and about relationships and everything that we're going through, it's based on truth, seeing through the lens of God, and that's all you need. And if people don't like that message, and they'll turn around and say, well, what do you know? You've never been married. Then all you have to say, this is the Bible, this is the word of God, and it's, it's all him. I'm just a messenger. That's
So
that. No disclaimer. That's
no disclaimer. Well, honestly, I didn't do any explanation. I just said, hey, I have a Bible study. This is why I posted. I started a Bible study last month. You're invited, period. Done.
Yeah.
So no explanation, because the explanation is also sort of trying to explain why I can do this, right? No explanation, no disclaimer, no second guessing. This is the path I'm on. I'm inviting you, right? Wrong Jay. So I wanted truth.
Okay.
Truth is, I get what they're saying, but love is greater than truth, right? And so I think where they're going is that, they're starting with the world's idea of what love is, right? And the reason I say love is greater than truth is because God is love, right? God literally gives the description of who he is as the word love, right? So to say that something is greater than love is to say that something is greater than God. And so that's where I have to disagree, right?
I was going to say, but I don't know if I'm going in the direction where I say something is greater than God. I'm just saying that for me.
For that analogy, what they're saying is that you build on truth. No one builds. No, that's not. It doesn't say in the Bible anywhere build on truth, right? Because people's truth are going to be ever changing. Your truth is a product of, basically what you believe and what you ascribe to and what you create in your own mind and in your own space, in your own community. That's truth, right? Love, God gives us a definition of love, and he is love, right? So
I actually disagree with you here.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
So the reason why I'm saying I'm disagreeing, it's because I'm looking at the truth that comes, the truth and the word that comes from the Bible, and what God says, how he, the message that we're getting from him, and how he wants us to, be or behave, or, I feel like, I'm talking about truth as a foundation in anything. And I understand that the love is great, or maybe, I understand that God's love is tremendous, and through his love for us, we got Jesus for our salvation. So I understand that particular aspect, but I feel like I think that at the base of everything, it has to be truth, and not necessarily my own personal truth influenced by the society and what happens around us, but just truth. When you are building in a relationship with a partner, you want all that relationship to be based on truth and honesty and sincerity, and then to be wrapped up in love. Because you can start with love, and love can be great and this, that, and the other, but if he's lacking the ability to be honest and truthful and faithful, then things are not.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying, and I stand firm. So
okay.
So what you're saying is world-based, right? So and this is the distinction I'm trying to make. When we as people think about love, we think about emotion, right? We think about, maybe acts of service or acts, to benefit a partner or a person or whatever, right? But we're thinking of love as something that's changeable, right? Based on how we're feeling or where we're at in life. And what I'm saying is, yes, that's how the world acts. That's how we are as human beings. You know, I love you today, I hate you tomorrow, you know, whatever. I love you, I'll do for you. I don't love you, you ain't getting nothing. I get it, right? But that's not what I'm talking about. That's not the love that I'm saying to build a life on. If we go to John, 1 John chapter 4, this is what I'm talking about. It says God is love. It's not saying right here, it doesn't say God, you know, love is through God. God dispenses love. Get some of God's love. It's not saying that. It's saying that he is literally love, period. Like done, right? So that tells me that the small way that we think of love in our human experiences and our human relationships is not what he is, right? He can't be small experiences, and he can't be contained within the space of our feelings, right? And so if we are to gosh. So, for example, Jesus says that he's the truth and the light, right? And so you can say, okay, well, I'm going to build, you know, we're going to go biblical and we're going to build on Jesus's truth, right? That's one thing too, right? But Jesus himself says, you know, listen, I'm only a messenger. Don't look to me for absolutely everything, because I'm only here to share the word that I've been given, right? So Jesus was like, basically, don't praise me, don't worship me, don't put me on a pedestal, but he's also truth and light, right? So even if you just have that, you already know that we're not building on truth. Even if you just have that, what Jesus says, we're not building on truth. That's what I'm saying. So even if we take us humans out of it, our emotion out of it, even if we take Jesus as he called himself, truth and light, right? And we take God, what he calls himself, love, how are you going to build on a messenger and not on the message, like on the person who is giving the message, right? And that's all I'm saying. Just strip it down to its bare minimum, right? And if God is love, we're saying God is love, and those who abide in love abide in God, and God abides in them. Love has been perfected among us in this, that we may have boldness on the day of judgment, because as he is, so are we in this world, right? So what that says to me is that not only did he create us in his image, right? He is trying to get us to a point where we become who he is. And that's love, right? It doesn't say God is truth and we should become the truth. It doesn't say that we need to build our life on what our idea of truth is or what someone's reflection of truth is. It says that God is love, and in him is everything. And in him is where we want to be, right? And we want him in us. And it specifically says that thing, that it is love. And so that's anyone saying to build on anything else, I think they're missing this major passage. I think it tells us everything we need to know about what he wants for our relationship with him, and how our relationships with each other should be, right? Because it also says that, where does it say, anyone who doesn't love doesn't know God, you know? There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, for fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not reached perfection in love. We love because he first loved us. Those who say, I love God and hate their brothers and sisters are liars. For those who do not love a brother or sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. The commandment we have from him is this: those who love God must love their brothers and sisters also. This is all relationship. And this is what we're building on. Nothing in this passage talks about truth. Nothing.
Okay, you're making a very solid, strong point. I will have to go back and reconcile and look at it, and let's see where my where I'm standing after my my study, to put it like that.
Okay, so it's 1 John chapter 4.
Okay, 1 John chapter 4.
And the whole chapter is about who God is and love and how it impacts us and how we are to act with love. And
Okay.
and I think a lot of people, because a lot of people have this connotation of love being this romantic notion, they sort of gloss over that. It's like, oh, I'm not going to love my brothers and sisters like that. Oh, love my neighbors. Love my neighbors for what? But that's he's not talking romantic feely. He's basically talking about humanity being one, right? And this is his goal through relationships.
Yep.